I have a son who's been working with Beacon for years over at the Auto Mall, and I have a daughter who is also handicapped who works with TCH at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base under federal contract. So I'm experiencing this in a multidimensional way. And a couple of things were striking me. One was that the Americans with Disabilities Act, as far as I understood it, sought a reasonable accommodation. And that's an interesting thought here I'm seeing with the group, because we all know what's reasonable from our point of view, because we're dealing with a population that isn't in the majority. And so in effect, what may happen here if we keep going this way is we're going to create a new glass ceiling, and we're going to drop it right on the heads of these people, because it's going to look like somebody's being noble. And the thought of a pay raise is always noble in society. We value pay. So we'd value a raise. Sure, I'd love my son and my daughter to make more money. But if the consequence is that Sean goes from working for 20 hours to 3 hours, he's almost a 30-year-old man, biologically. But he's not a 30-year-old man in other ways. And the notion of him being at home eating potato chips and watching television for those extra hours does not thrill me. It doesn't thrill me at all. And there's some mention about the need for social protection and social interaction, because that's a dynamic for us as parents and guardians that's different than others. I mean, I never worried about my son joining a street gang. I never worried. I could have put drugs in the living room and put them in front of him and he'd have walked away, because that's his dynamic. But he could be in trouble if some of the regular ed people are there, and that exposure element increases when we're not adding those protections that we get in sheltered workshop situations. As far as people thinking that we're going to abuse, that there's abuse, I don't know about you, but I go see my son and daughter at work all the time. I'm invited in. I don't know how many meetings we've attended, but it's been a few more than I think the quote-unquote regular ed population attends. There are certain things they don't know what an ISP is, and they don't know what are all the different names that the DDD, the Department of Developmental Disabilities, it changes names of whatever a social worker is. But I don't think that my brothers and sisters who have quote-unquote regular kids, I don't think they see their social workers, but I see mine for my children. So I think it's just funny that these changes are, noble in concept, but not noble in consequence. Really ignoble in consequence. And so it's kind of scary to me, quite honestly.
Please, go ahead.
Sure. My experience as a father of 2 boys was that one of them was typical and one was non-typical. My son went through the high school experience, and as we got ready to transition at age 22, as being given those opportunities to stay there a little longer and try and gain some more skills, was that there was really no functional transition available into the community. The transition program was poorly funded, poorly articulated. Caring people, I've never met uncaring people in any dynamic that we've been involved in, but certainly the difficulty was finding opportunity for him. We could not identify an entrepreneur, an organization that would allow him to be coached or allow him to participate. We didn't really know where to turn, but we found Beacon Group was available, and Beacon Group had opportunities if we could connect with them. And we were able to set up several summer opportunities for him so that he, when he was not eligible for education during the summer, was able to go to Beacon Group and able to start learning what it was going to be like after high school when he was going to be vocationally connected, when he had things to do that weren't involved with sitting in a classroom and receiving instruction. That was a tremendous thing. That gave us the ability to let him learn some new skills and have some new experiences, and to begin to socialize with other people in a victimless manner, where he was protected, where his medical needs could be addressed, and where things could be scaled to his current understandings. That was really important to us. We gave a great sigh of relief that there was an opportunity to do that. Even more so when he failed to qualify after graduation from high school for vocational rehabilitation training, so that he could then get more assistance in actually learning how to be competitively employed. Since that wasn't available, having a place like Beacon where there is a tier of not only what's historically been called sheltered workshops, but also opportunities in the community to still have job coaching or to gain other necessary skills before competitive placement was a real relief to us. Now the articulation of those, the actual working through that experience, there's always bumps in the road. A lot of it depends on how much is available in your community, how much a particular organization has. We found that Beacon Group had problems like any organization. And we had a chance to look at the very few other alternatives, even in a city of about 1 million like Tucson. And we were so grateful that Beacon Group was here and was able to be connected with in a significant way in a dialogue about what was best for him. So we tried a couple of things. We tried first the sheltered workshop environment. And there were a number of different skills that they were open to letting him try. We had to do a little prodding, we had to do a little creative work, we had to do some connections on individual basis with supervisors of different skill levels and say, where would this possibly be an opportunity rather than an accident waiting to happen? And certainly they were open to that. Would I have found that in another employment environment? Maybe, maybe not. It's very individually based. But certainly we fostered that here, and we were really grateful for that. Then we were able to take him from outside the workshop central location into the community environment and try something at another setting. Unfortunately, that particular setting, for a couple of different reasons, really didn't work out very well. And after a couple of months, he came back to the main location and is working in the sheltered area. We're very grateful for that, and I want to emphasize all the way through this, his attitude, he's happy to be here. He's happy to do things. He's found some things more challenging and more difficult. And he's going to need more support in that environment. And where those supports weren't available, it was only prudent to pull him back to the, if you want to call it this, lowest level of challenge, the least difficult environment, the most supported environment. And we were grateful that that was there and that was an option. He's so happy coming to work every day at Beacon Group. He smiles. As a matter of fact, on the weekend, he's like, can we go to Beacon Group? Not really. It's not that time. You're going to have to wait. When we're on vacation, is it Beacon Group today? No, not really. You're going to do something else. You get to go another day. Okay, that'll be fine. But, you know, in those sorts of circumstances, to be faced with, you know, that support, that opportunity is no longer going to be there for him. Like others have mentioned, you know, the devil in the details of, well, can we actually work just as hard as we were before to find another alternative other than sitting on a couch, overeating, over-entertained? Can I not work as much so that I can help take care of him? What is it we're going to have to do if that's not available any longer? Those all sound like really hard choices. And I don't want to face hard choices. Anybody in my life doesn't want me to face more hard choices. But as a guardian legally appointed under our state, I have to ask myself, can I substantially impact the choices that are available to him? And I'm hoping that with an open dialogue about what choices are available, and if we can change things for the better, a sheltered workshop can certainly be improved on, so can community-based employment. Those things are implemented either well or poorly. And certainly in our experience, having substantial conversation, even if it's under the threat of lost funding for economic reasons or legal justifications under a pretext of perhaps better integration, we can make some good things happen if we're all open to working together to make that so.
But for day-to-day, your lives together, day-to-day it's great for that he can come here.
Yeah, it's been a real blessing, I think was the term that was used earlier, and that's true.
Conversation continues and the issues you were just talking about, but makes a difference that he has, he's here.
Yeah, there's no question that having my son able to come here rather than the worst possible option of we keep him at home because there's no other identified resource for one who's got autism, mental retardation, epilepsy, very significant concerns that bar him from participating in so many aspects of everyday life.
And you just described a very happy young man who is gets to come here. Dee, tell us about your situation.
Well, my daughter Jennifer's 40, and her birthday's coming up really soon, she'll tell you, because in October we start planning our next birthday in September. So it's getting closer. And she's been at Beacon for, I'm guessing, 20 years, maybe 22, because I know she came here during her high school career. Toward the last couple of years she was at Beacon. She has tried working in the community. You know, we've tried placement in a community setting. She worked at Value Village for about 3 days probably. And when we asked her if she wanted to go back, she says, "No way." Well, how come? I don't want to stand on my feet all day. So she was very clear about she didn't want to work at Value Village where she would be standing on her feet all day. She tried working in a business that had several of our clients there. They were making coasters, boxing them and putting the seals on the back of them, and etc. And that was a very wonderful job. She liked it, but it was an isolate within the community. So she wasn't really actually working out in the community with normal people, so to speak. They had them in one room, isolated from all the rest of the business. So when we talk about community employment, it isn't always what it's cracked up to be. So she was just as isolated as she is here in the sheltered setting. She loves work. She's been a royal pain in the rear for the last year and a half, and the main reason for that is she lost her dad about a year ago, a little over a year ago. And I don't think she could be in a better place in that situation, because Beacon understands, pays attention to her, has been willing to put up with some of her aberrant behavior, like deciding she's leaving, it's time to go, so she walks out. Well, she's walking home, she's decided. Well, who knows? She doesn't know how to find home, but that's where she's going. It's time to go. Well, it's only 2 o'clock. Or she's decided that she's done at 12 after lunch, so she sits out there and waits until 2:30 or 3 shows up. And they have to work at getting her back to work. So you're not going to find that happening out in the community, where they've got people so concerned about her well-being and her welfare that they take time and energy and extra staff and extra support. She's also never, I don't care what anybody says, she will never be able to be competitively employed.
The integration.
You know, nobody's going to pay her $6.75 or $6.25 or $7.25 or $10.10 an hour, because she cannot compete. And that's the basic word, competitive. She cannot do the 100% of the job, or even the 90% that a lot of people do, you know, like so-called normal people. And so if she can do 50% or 30%, what employer in their right mind would hire her when they can hire somebody who can do 100%? So there are, and yes, I'm her parent, and yes, I know best for her, because I've lived with her for 40 years. Well, not quite. I've lived with her 40, but fortunately she's out in a residential program that has her most days of the week now, and I have Friday, Saturday. That service would not be available to her if she worked competitively, because she would make too much money. So what we have here is the law of unintended consequences that will absolutely take place and happen if this whole thing goes into being. If it actually comes to pass, benefits will be lost. That it will include the kind of benefits she gets working here, because there are monies provided to places like Beacon to provide the support and the assistance and the training and the monitoring and the going with to the job in the community, if it is a job in the community. None of that will be available to my daughter, his son. Your yes for yours, probably no for yours. Because, and I don't know you guys, others, you know, because they'll make too much money. Should anybody even be willing to hire them? I mean, Jennifer communicates at about the level that I was listening to Jordan. It takes a long time to be able to even understand, and I'm having more and more trouble as she gets older, understanding what she's trying to tell me. So how is she going to be able to make it out in the community? She's not. And it's not that I don't believe that everybody who can work either competitively or out in the community with support, I believe they should totally be there. Absolutely. But I don't think the choice of having sheltered settings be done away with is a good move. That's kind of getting us back to before we even had 94-142 and the Americans with Disabilities Act. Because then all of a sudden these people are going to be where? Warehoused somewhere or back in their homes. It's like we're going back 40 years, 30 years.
What is life like if your daughter had to live at home? How does that affect the rest of the family and
Well, the rest of the family currently is me.
Okay. Right.
At this point. Her sister lives in North Carolina with husband and only grandbaby. I would be in a loony bin if she had to live back at home with me at this point in my life. I'm not getting any younger. She's not getting any younger. I know that there are many of the 70 and 80, I guess I better be careful how I use that one, hadn't I? Many of the 80-year-olds who still have some of their young elderly people at home. But I don't think that's good for her because she's having enough trouble dealing with the death of her dad. What's she going to be like if I go before she does? And change, oh my God, change is the worst thing in the world for these kids. And there will always be kids to me, I realize. Maybe I shouldn't talk like that because this group would think, well, then that parent isn't willing to give them the...
Actually, in this crowd, you're fine.
I know in this crowd, but we don't know who's going to see this thing out wherever, you know. So it's just not a good idea, either to get rid of 14C of the Fair Labor Standards Act, or to shut down sheltered workshops. And I don't care what Rhode Island's doing; they're blowing it. And I don't like, I like Obama, but I sure don't like this decision. Don't have to like him 100%. And it's just like, I can see our legislature going for it big time because then they don't have to spend as much money maybe, they think. You know, they'll do it just to save, quote unquote, think that they're saving money. Scares the bejesus out of me.
I think they'll end up spending way more money.
Way more, exactly.
And you said, what does it look like if Jordan went down to like 5 hours a week? We have legal guardianship over him. We both work full-time plus. Can we leave somebody at home that you have legal guardianship over and some peril comes to them and all of a sudden we're on 9 on your side with an orange scarf for involuntary manslaughter? So you're going to have to be getting other agencies in, and then if he's making too much money, he drops his benefits, and I mean, it'll just be chaos.
Well, and there's no way I could leave Jennifer at home because when she gets left alone, she takes off. I mean, I've had calls from the police. I've had people find her, you know, 2 miles from home. I've had calls from the emergency room, you know, because she's got to go get that soda. Doesn't matter whether she has any money or not. So, I mean, she needs someone paying attention. Well, if she were living at home with me, and unfortunately, you're right, she would be watching television and eating all the junk in the world if I had it in the house. Or she'd be leaving the house to go see if she could find some. And unfortunately, she doesn't have money with her, so that doesn't seem to deter her either.
I will.
So then we're going to be in jail.
The orange 9 on your side.
Yeah.
Ted, go ahead. We haven't heard from you.
Well, gosh, I don't know where to start. Calling them kids, you know, and she's apologizing for that, but we all look at our kids as kids. They're kids. I mean, you said, you know, your son is a man, but you know, my daughter's almost 40 years old, but, you know, she acts like a kid in grade school or junior high school, you know, doesn't like to share things and, you know, gets cranky with other people. She's autistic and she's bipolar, and there's absolutely no way she could work in a regular job. There's absolutely no way. I've tried it. We tried many times. She's been at Beacon for a long time, but Beacon has provided job coaches for us. Job coaches actually go out on the job and help her on the job and everything. But the minute the job coach is gone, forget it. I mean, there's just, you can't take an autistic person who relies completely on structure, have to have the same structure all the time, and the thinking is so concrete. And when you tell someone, wipe that table and then change all the salt shakers. This is a true story. That's too much. You can't tell somebody do this and then do that. They can't process two things in a row. So my daughter got upset. She got mad. She yelled at the supervisor because he wasn't the normal guy that usually told her what to do anyhow. It was somebody else. And she just started yelling at people and went off the deep end, and I got a phone call. That's the kind of thing that happens all the time. How are you going to have somebody like that, God bless her, working in a situation where normalcy is required of her, where when you tell her to do something, she's got to do it, and then she's got to do these other jobs. She can't handle that. And the job she has here, she gets paid more or less depending on her production. How cool is that? I mean, if she really puts a lot of those rivets in and everything, she gets a higher paycheck. She calls me up, Dad, I got $160. That's a 2-week paycheck, by the way. But it makes her feel great that, you know, that she's able to, the harder she works, the more she gets. Someone talked about intermittent explosive. I know a little bit about that too. And if you have somebody on the job and a little thing sets them off, and they start swinging their lunch pail at somebody or something like that, any other job, you are fired. But at this job, hey, you know, we need to calm down. I think you probably maybe need to go home. We'll call Sunvan and get your ride home. And why don't you take tomorrow off, and everything will be fine when you get back. Because when she gets back, the person that she was mad at, they're good old buddies again. This is where all her friends are. They have dances here at Beacon for these clients. They have lunches here. She gets all excited when they have a spaghetti lunch here. Dad, do you have $2 for a spaghetti lunch? Boy, do they love that. I mean, the workplace that's provided here is something that gives them socialization. It takes care of them. Most jobs have supervisors. This job has supervisors. They really supervise the clients that we need to have supervised. I would be in the loony bin too. I mean, I love my daughter to pieces, but you know, she's hard to deal with. She's real hard to deal with sometimes. And the people at Beacon know how to deal with her. Where else am I going to find that? Where else is she going to be able to work? And you try to integrate them. My daughter worked at Pima College for a while, and in the cafeteria. And it was another thing. She couldn't keep up. She couldn't go fast enough. And then one day, she came home with her jean jacket, and on the back of the jean jacket, it said, retard. So she didn't go back to that job. And this is the kind of thing these people get to face, isn't it?
Yes.
I can't say anymore.
And I'd like to, the self-esteem, you know, every human being, normal, you know, we all have self-esteem issues. And I've heard so many of you talk about today, just how good they feel about, you know, your son, your daughter, how good they feel about themselves. And I would like to know what that's like in your family, how that trickles down. You know, that feeling itself enhances not only them, you know, but
we
also
have a reality here. We deal in a reality that the community doesn't see. They don't know about our reality. It's always funny too, and I know you've seen this. We had a spaghetti dinner that we were going to, it was an event in Show Low. Nobody else at the spaghetti dinner really knew Rosanna and Sean, and they were having a bad time. And they saw a 30-year-old and a 29-year-old literally acting like a 6-year-old, throwing tantrums and stuff like that. And I was caught between trying to explain to the group, hey, this is, you know, this is their normal. I'm going to take them out. I'm going to cool them down and stuff like that. That's the reality we deal with. And if you start taking the other reality and saying, we're just going to pretend that this reality doesn't exist. We're just going to act like, poof, it's gone. Well, that'd be great. That would just be wonderful, wouldn't it? Except it wouldn't happen. Because tomorrow at 4:30 in the morning, the alarm goes off, my daughter gets up to go to work. That's what happens tomorrow in her setting. 30 minutes later, the alarm goes off, my son goes to work in his setting. That's our reality. And you know, it's funny, and I see people, and I don't know how many of you had to explain the situation to someone else, you know, in 30 seconds. In fact, I know Skip and I have involved in a training where we work on trying to train law enforcement officers how to deal with these situations. Because I don't think we want to see our jails full of people who didn't need to be there. They didn't
who really aren't getting any benefit from being there.
Right, and if criminal intent were factored in properly, couldn't be there.
Right.
But what happens by default? What happens, you know, they go to jail. Sure. We both worked in the criminal justice system. I can tell you they do. They really happens. So there is something to fear. And that could be a consequence.
Right, exactly.
The other consequence is the one that we're all familiar with, that we hated the institutionalization of this population for so many years, and that's over-medicating them. Certainly the psychologists would tell us that these kids need to be on a cocktail of lots of different things to alter their behavior, and that the only way to deal with these people is either to institutionalize them or to medicate them to the point where they don't pose any concern. Well, to not be of concern at a family gathering or a social event that you want to take them to, and to medicate them to that point means that you don't care about their self-esteem anymore, and you don't care about the family's ability to work together anymore, or any personal growth. These alternatives, when you talk about how is your child, your adult's self-esteem, it's really difficult to measure it when they're either in prison or medicated into a zombie-like state. So what choices do we have to bolster their self-esteem, but to respect their opportunity to learn and to grow the same as we want to learn and grow, to be given meaningful opportunities to experience work and to work with peers and to grow socially? That's not an easy situation, but Beacon Group has given us the first opportunity to do that outside of the public school system, and we're grateful for that.
In terms of self-esteem, there's some very tangible effects of having good self-esteem. Jordan, he thrives on routine, and he's a very hard worker. And when his self-esteem is increased, his health is increased. I cannot recall the last time he was sick. And when he was younger, when he was in a contained classroom where he didn't have choices, where he didn't have social interaction, that push to be more independent, just that push to be, to grow up without, you know, in the least contained setting. And that's what we've always tried to uphold. But working here at Beacon, he's had all the choices and more. And his self-esteem is so good. He is so proud that he works. And it's not like going to, and they certainly have their places, but the day camps, that's day camp. And it's fun and it serves a purpose, but he knows he's working. He sees all three of his sisters working. He sees my husband and I work. He works. He gets a paycheck. He rides the bus by himself. He is initiating conversations. We'll be out in the community and somebody will say, hey, Jordan, and he's like every other man. He's like, hey, you know, and it's given him that confidence to be able to be a more social being. And like I said, he's got some significant health problems, cardiac issues, He's had just numerous ear problems. Not one since he's reached adulthood and been out in the community, and we are astounded. And he makes better, he's got a lot of common sense, but I really accredit that. And he's growing, he's not stagnant. He comes to work and he really, I'm beginning to see more critical thinking skills, a few more abstract, not to the point where he could be supported independently out in the community with a job. He'd just shrink back. He'd go back into his own little world. He wouldn't initiate conversation, but here he's allowed that opportunity to come into his own and have the self-esteem that I think all of us are afforded with, you know, the gift of work.
You know, I think we always assumed that the community would be prepared to accept our children.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know.
You find that out very soon.
Yeah, and I know my son attempted to go out into the community and work on his own. And he went into a government setting and worked for about 30 days, and they discovered, I guess, that he could not multitask, and he was a little bit slower than the rest of them in that setting. So the supervisor started slamming dishes and pots and pans, and he would come home, and we didn't know what to do. We didn't know what to do. It was soon after that that they brought him down from about 20 hours to about 2 hours a week. And that was very demoralizing for him. We didn't know what we were going to do. We just came to Beacon Group, and he was at the time very, very sick, and he was able to come in here, and it provided a work environment that was not very stressful for about a year until he was able to regain his health. And after that, he just gradually got a little bit better. It was at that point that they were able to match him up with an employer that understood that he had disabilities, and they were able to provide an environment where he could go and just kind of you know, foster a job and improve. He's done a lot better because he's had the job coaching and because it's repetitive work. They understand his disabilities. They provide an environment that is very open and the understanding. He's doing well right now. As I said before, he's got multiple sclerosis. It's not getting better, it's getting worse. So he's 27 years old right now. What happens in 10 years? You know, right now, his self-esteem is wonderful because he gets up every day, he goes to work, he earns a paycheck, he's made a lot of friends. The friends that he's made at his job, a lot of them play sports with Special Olympics, and so does he. So it's led to other things in his life that have been very positive. He couldn't have gotten that job if it weren't for some of the resources that were offered here for him. And if you take that choice away from him, I'm not sure what he's going to do, because I can't go into those jobs and train him, even though I would want to. I couldn't do that. And I don't know that some of these employers would be willing to provide that kind of a setting for him. They matched him up with an employer that is understanding, and because of that, he's been successful. I don't know where I could do that by myself, and if they take away that option, I don't know what would happen to him. I really don't know.
Well, and think about 10 years from now with him.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
he can't continue to do the job he
Right.
loves, and this one isn't available to come back to.
Right. What
Because
would
it's
happen?
the coming back that's as important as having it here to begin with.
Yeah, he has to have that option. It has to be available for people that want it.
What about the value of this paycheck? I think you know, some people think that the proposed 10 upping the minimum wage and providing minimum wage and integrating. What is the value of a paycheck in your family?
First of all, my 2 kids think they're rich.
That's right, exactly.
They think they're rich.
They do. It doesn't matter what the amount of the check is. The fact that they get a check, Scott doesn't read or write, so he has no idea. He doesn't do figures, so he doesn't know what's on the paycheck. So he is taking us all out to dinner if he makes $1.50. You know, it doesn't. Money doesn't have. He doesn't have any concept of money.
Abstract.
The idea that he gets a paycheck, no matter what it is important to him. A pay raise wouldn't mean anything to Scott at all.
Well, and Jennifer would get $24 for 2 weeks, and we'd go to the bank to cash it, and she would proudly tell the teller, "I'm taking my mom out to dinner, mom and dad out to dinner," and then she'd look at me and she'd say, "Look, Mom, I'm so lucky, I'm so rich." $24 for 2 weeks. She had no clue. Math is not something that kids can comprehend because it's so bloody abstract. And they don't do abstract thinking at all at certain levels.
Well, they failed to realize the backlash with the other employees. That, you know, if they're in an environment working at a Taco Bell or a McDonald's where everybody's making minimum wage, and then you've got somebody that has some severe disabilities making the same amount of money as they are, but you only doing about 20% of the work. So that means that in most of those environments, they have, in a profit business, they hire the number of people that they need to do the job. So if you've got somebody that's only doing 20% of the job, the other people are going to have to make up that difference, and they're not going to get any more money for it. So it creates an environment that's just caustic for the kids that are working in there. Yeah. And I don't blame them. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in a job where I was getting the same pay as everybody else, but not everybody was doing the same amount of work, at least close to that.
I was going to say, I did that my whole life.
You know, I do have a question that does not seem to get posed very often, and statistically, I would love to know. These people that are stepping up wanting to make these decisions for people like us who have these individuals, how many of them have individuals in their family that they live with 24/7, 365, where they see this person from the moment they get up to the moment they go to bed? I'm not talking about going to some institution and observing these kids for 8 hours a day for 3 weeks and then come out and going, I'm an expert now and I know exactly what these kids need. They have no idea what my son needs, what my son is capable of doing, what his idea of success is, where his self-esteem is. They have no idea. And here they are, they're trying to make these decisions for us, trying to tell us what is best for us by taking away our choices as parents to decide what we know is best because we know our children. That whole idea is ludicrous to me. I don't understand why these people...
And where are they going to be when this fails?
Yes.
Because we all know where we'll be.
They'll just move on to something else.
Because we'll be in the loony bin or on 9 on your side.
They will tuck tail and run and say it's not their fault.
Right.
And they'll say, we just threw the idea out there. We just threw it out there. Sorry, we weren't responsible for trying to make it successful. We just wanted you guys to have that idea out there. But this whole concept of whatever you want to label it, shelter workshops, Beacon Group, whatever you want to call, whatever word you want to put on it, all I know is I have seen what it has done for my son these past few years and how much it has helped him, how much it helped him grow as an individual, how much it has helped stabilize our family because we had no idea what we were going to do with him when he finished high school. And it has been nothing but a benefit. It has been a blessing and been very advantageous for our family. And I can't even count the number of ways it has helped us for him to be able to do this.
What's interesting to me, Skip pointed to the negative consequences in the work situation. A few days ago, my daughter goes into Hot Topics, and she likes the store. And one of the store workers, and Hot Topics is an interesting store full of interesting color hair, they go in there, and the first thing the person says is, oh, hi, Rosanna, we haven't seen you in a couple of days. How you doing? That's a regular ed kid, but Rosanna is a regular customer there. She's spending her money that she earned in that store, and so instead of the coworker being upset, now we've got it turned around in the correct order. She's the customer. She has disposable income that she wishes to spend, that she earned in a situation like this, and they're going to respond to her properly. Now we've gone the right way as opposed to the wrong way. And so it can go either way, but like walk a mile in our shoes.
Well, like in terms of value, kind of indirectly, if their hours are cut and they're sitting at home in front of the TV, and then we all have to stay at home, and they're not getting activity or socialized, we're not moving them towards that independency, to that the area of least confinement. I mean, we all want them to be successful. We're all going to die. I mean, we really are. And we have to put, you know, some real supports in place for after we're gone. If they all of a sudden sit at home all day, or they're not used to change, or, you know, riding public transportation, and we're gone, and then they get stuck in a group home without choices, without a place to work at. I mean, what's really, how's that going to benefit government and everything? They're going to be spending more money if the parents and the guardians aren't able, and groups like Beacon, you know, really guide, support, and coach these people into a more independent or semi-independent, to the best of their level ability, to be functional adults.
To be the best Jordan or the best Jimmy, you know, not the best normal person. Yeah. You know, that just to be who they are at the very best they can.
And go ahead.
There's another piece of this, it seems to me. I'm sure that some of this is coming because there have been sheltered workshops that were abusive, that were taking advantage of. I think there was one written up in New York somewhere. And so instead of taking a sledgehammer to the whole industry, I mean, the idea is, well, if it's a bad one, close it down.
Right.
That seems
Exactly.
to me, it's like, duh.
Exactly.
So, and I don't want bad sheltered workshops. That's not advantageous and good for our kids either. We want good ones like Beacon, and we want them for all handicapped people, regardless. And there are places in this country I know who have no services for people like my Jennifer and our children. So it's just the thought that we would close them all down because we found a bad one here and there.
Yeah.
Different areas of this country are very segregated. This country is just so diverse. And the one thing that I have found as I have gotten older and gotten more politically aware of what is going on around me with my family, and that the people making the decisions for this country, whether it be politicians or high-powered business people or whoever is involved, they need to learn and understand that a blanket rule does not apply from border to border. It doesn't work that way. You see it just in Tucson alone. I was in the food business for years. And just because the store on the south side sells all types of assorted Hispanic pastries on the weekends, up in Oro Valley, you may not sell that much. It's not the same clientele. Well, the country is the same way. And as you were saying, Dee, just because you have some sheltered workshops out there that maybe have not been successful or maybe have had the wrong philosophy, you cannot come in and just crush everything and make this blanket statement that we believe this is going to be best for everybody. It just will not work. You will not. That is not the solution.
Well, you've all been very eloquent in describing and very far-sighted. Is there something that you would like to mention or to talk about in particular that you think is important in this vein, in this topic, in relationship to your family or to your children that we haven't talked about, or a point that you'd like to make that you want to just make it again? Are you anything else?
Well, I know as parents, there's the one thing, and it's been danced around. I've heard little bits from you and from you. Our children are going to outlive us.
Chances are.
Probably.
Chances are.
We hope. We all hope.
I know. I pray no too.
And we're not going to be here. So if you want your children, if you want these children to not be properly socialized and to become a burden on the state, then maybe you should follow the solution and abolish all these choices, and then you'll end up with that. And that's what you will have, because we will all be gone.
So for yourselves right now, if I understand this correctly, the way Arizona is, or the work that in Beacon, and I'm the, educate me, all right? You feel comfortable if your children live longer than you, as to what the care is going to be? Okay, all right.
Yes. What did I open?
Okay, job-wise.
No, you worry about it every day.
Okay.
Even if you feel that you have everything in place, you still have that worry there, and not just with our special needs children too. I mean, you have that with all your kids. You do worry about your kids, regardless of where they are in their life and what they're doing in their life. You do worry. With your special needs, you are really aware of it. You really do worry. You want to make sure you have all your little steps in place and ready to go. And I don't believe anybody ever feels they are completely prepared. You always feel there's something else you could do a little bit better.
And that sort of concern is true even with the overwhelmingly positive comments we've made about having a sheltered workshop available to us. That doesn't mean that a particular sheltered workshop doesn't have problems and can't be improved. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't like to see our person maybe in a different setting, but it's just not available. There's just no opportunity now. I think the wonderful thing would be, if my son was able to choose, I want to be in the competitive environment, I like that job. Oh, wait, it really doesn't work for me now. And I know, Dad, you think that's a great thing and I should challenge myself. And my program manager thinks that's a great thing and I should get out there and try. I just don't want to. If I want to make the choice that I want to take early retirement, or I want to work part-time at a bike shop down the street, I get to do that. Why can't he choose that? We'd like to have those opportunities wherever they might be. And to legislatively decide that our charity is no longer to extend to that degree because we have an economic justification that tells us we're going to cut off a certain population from having those services. That is a very risky choice. Certainly will overburden the criminal justice system. We may overburden the medical system. Those things have already been pointed out in the decision making that's going on here. But the social cost to us and to our loss of productivity, to our loss of socialization, to the culture that we've built here is not calculated. And that's why we're speaking out.
I'll tell you, if we lose Beacon, the cost will go up because I'll seriously over-medicate until I'm incarcerated. I tell you what, because I will not going to take care of Scotty all day long, every day. That's for certainly sure.
No, as much as I get upset with the program that provides her residential placement, which she's been in now for 10 years, took us longer than probably should have to let her get out on her own. And they'll never do it like Mom wants it done. Sure. They'll never do it perfectly because Mom knows best. But you know what? She grew tremendously. In some ways I'm not so keen on, but she grew because she was out there much more independent and not under our thumb all day, every day. And now when she's home for 2 days, I go nuts.
I can't even imagine.
It's like she wants to spend 2 nights and I'm going, okay,
One final comment, if I may. 25 years ago, and my wife has heard me say this numerous times, 25 years ago, if you would have told me that we would have our son and we would be where we are with him today, I would have said no way in hell. But now, looking back and seeing how all this, because when you first get told, I remember vividly the first time that our doctor told us that we had a mentally retarded child and that he had Down syndrome. The thoughts that run through your mind for the rest of your life and how much your life is going to change already, you haven't even gotten to that point yet, but the thoughts that are already running through your mind, Now I look back over 25 years and to see where we are today with Jordan, and because of organizations like Beacon and all the other supports he's had, it absolutely just blows my mind to see how far he has come and what he is capable of doing. Had this organization not been here, or an organization similar to this, we probably would be living the life that I was threatened with 25 years ago. That's probably where we'd be. But fortunately for us, we are not there. We are way ahead of the game, and it has turned out to be such an advantageous situation.
And on that note, I think every time, probably all of us parents, guardians will agree, you raise that bar, they jump over it. It's just having the confidence to be able to do that. And I mean, you're putting it all out there. It's scary. But organizations like Beacon, that gives them that opportunity to grow, to make their own choices, to come back, to go out, it really adds up. You raise that bar, they'll jump over it. So.
Maybe just one quick thing. If somebody said,
Look at me when you answer it for the shot.
DHS or Department of Justice or Congress or wherever said, good news, we're not going to have sub-minimum wage jobs anymore for your sons and daughters. Only minimum wage jobs in the community, no more sheltered environment, quickly. What would you want to say to them?
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Don't you dare.
It's a mistake, a big mistake.
Horrible mistake.
Right.
Well,
the
they won't have
definition
jobs. They will not have jobs. That's just the bottom line.
Not a realistic view. Not a realistic view.
The definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome.
It'll seriously threaten their independency and ability to grow as individuals.
I think the only legislators that should be able to act on this or put this forward are people that have special needs children.